Okay, Ms. Bergeron. Okay, this is in the matter of the Smith children, file 20545. All right, we're here today on a review permanency planning hearing and a motion to reinstate parenting time following an ex parte to suspend the bench conference. Just to briefly address whether or not we'll have a full hearing on that. And my understanding is we're just going to take the issue of parenting time as part of today's review. But I'll let the attorneys confirm that after appearances, beginning with our guardian ad litem.
Good morning, Honor. Ariel Berger here as the guardian ad litem for the minor children.
Ms. Sasha Thomas, counsel for the department.
Caitlin Young, Department of Health and Human Services.
Michael Brooks, I represent one of the fathers, Aaron Schmidt.
And Elias Muad, representing mom, Bailey Demansky.
And I am Bailey Demansky, mother of both.
Mr. Aaron Schmidt, I believe you are with us by Zoom today. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. All right, very good. Counselors, could you confirm that our bench conference simply was about that, or give us any comments that you might want about that? Let's start with Ms. Thomas.
Your Honor, I simply to reflect that I had asked for a bench conference just to review the procedure for today, given that there was the motion in the ex parte.
With the statements made by Ms. Thomas are correct, Judge. And what you said was correct.
I'm just along for the ride on Mr. Muad's motion, so I have no clue.
Ms. Berger.
I have nothing to add from our bench conference. I believe that we'll just hear any other motions with the review today.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. So then let's get to it. Your report, Ms. Berger, whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Judge. I was able to do virtual visits with the families and the children this reporting period. BS is reportedly doing really well. He's growing like a weed. He's obsessed with dinosaurs. Placement was able to show me his dinosaur toy box and toys and bed and all of the fun things they got on a Prime Day. They do have a toddler bed that the agency has ordered there that they are waiting on, so they can transition him into that. He is sick again. That poor kid can't catch a break. He has strep throat right now. I think he's probably had every sort of sickness that kids can get from daycare and beyond in the last couple of months. But other than that, he seems to be doing all right. He has a full mouth of teeth. He's just waiting on a couple of molars. He's been to the dentist 2 or 3 times already. He is exceeding expectations as far as development. He's talking, he's running around like a crazy little madman. Placement reports that he's very coordinated for how young he is. He's not tripping and falling over himself when he's running around. That he loves going to the park. He loves eating. He seems to be doing really well with his placement. Likewise with the minor child MW, he is exhibiting less and less behaviors now. He seems to have stabilized a little bit more. He does still have some temperaments, temper tantrums, but his father reports that he is doing really well as well. He has filed for a friend of the court order, I believe, and I don't know that he's filed again asking for that to change since Ms. Demansky has pled in her criminal case, but I believe if not, he does plan to do so. So at this time, they are continuing to thrive in their current placements. Father Schmidt has not re-engaged. I did attend a family team meeting with him this reporting period, and he did seem like he was going to re-engage, but he did not. I don't think he's had any visits. Visits for mother have been suspended. So at this time, I'm just asking for those things to continue, that there be another review period set, and that we consider filing a petition for termination related to Father Schmidt. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. If Ms. Young can please be sworn in to give her report.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Good morning, Ms. Young.
Morning.
Briefly, can you state how you are familiar with this case?
I am the assigned caseworker.
So you're providing foster care case management services to the family?
I am, yes.
And you provided a court report for today's hearing?
Yes.
And other than the court report, are there any attachments that you've included?
Just the case service plan, there was no service provider reports.
Okay, I can hear it.
Shouldn't have any more interruptions.
And as it relates to your court report or the case service plans, are there any updates or modifications that need to be made to the reports?
There is one that I do want to note. So on page 2 of the court report, section 2, or under the placement information, B, best interest. I did have in there, it was a typo on my part. We're in the best interest section for BS to return to the care of his father. We do need to modify that to remain in the care of his current relative placement. That was a former recommendation for his best interest. But this time it's the only, I believe, update that I have.
Thank you. And in your report, you indicate that.
Are we on YouTube?
Okay. You indicate that the oldest child is with his father at this time?
Yes.
Okay. And the youngest child is in a paternal relative placement?
Yes, they're a licensed foster home as well.
And your report indicates that sibling visits may not have been happening because the youngest was sick, as Ms. Berger has indicated.
Yes, he's been really sick, especially like end of May through all of June. It's been like back to back things that they've been dealing with.
Since the last review hearing, there has been an ex parte order entered to suspend parenting time. Your report doesn't necessarily, maybe I missed it, but it doesn't seem that you're offering an opinion as to whether to maintain that or change it. Do you have an opinion regarding parenting time?
This is kind of where I'm trying to weigh different options. So I kind of see where Ms. Berger was coming from with her recommendations as far as the suspension of the visits. I don't necessarily agree professionally on all of everything that was in that motion, especially in regards to an investigation that was underway. Ms. Demansky had nothing to do with that incident that happened in March that was referenced in that motion. So I don't necessarily agree with everything that was in it. Did we need to suspend visits? I don't know. I'm kind of mixed in the air. The visits were going very well. We didn't have any concerns with Ms. Demansky's supervised parenting time. I would have been fine continuing with those visits. I do understand, yes, she entered a plea agreement for the second-degree child abuse. I fully understand, I respect her decision in doing that. I don't fully agree with suspending of visits. Now, as far as Mr. Schmidt, his visits were prior suspended by the courts at the last hearing due to his lack of participation and his refusal to participate. He's since re-engaged with me to try to get back in services, but he's moved out of county. So we're just trying to figure out a plan of what he's going to participate in, try to get in touch with his attorney to discuss the parenting time for him specifically, because like I said, it was suspended the previous court hearing.
If Mr. Schmidt were to be permitted to have parenting time with his child, do you have an opinion as to whether there would be a risk of harm to the child's physical health or mental well-being?
I do feel that it's a concern that he hasn't been engaged for several months, and it was at least a month prior to the last court hearing, he stopped engaging in services and refusing to continue with parenting time. So it's been approximately 4 months, so he would have to be reacclimated into that supervised setting. We wouldn't go right to unsupervised, what we were doing prior to that. And so at this time, if we were to re-engage, it could very well have an impact on his mental health and well-being.
And as it relates to the older child, Ms. Berger had made a comment about the father potentially filing a change of custody. Do you have any updates on that
I spoke to dad and stepmom this morning. The stepmom did try to go and refile that for him. He works nights, so she was trying to file it while he was sleeping. And they would not allow her to file it, but she's not the legal parent. So they're gonna go this Friday when he's off work, get that refiled up in Genesee County. They were filing for the full custody, from my understanding.
In both of their children's placements, do you believe that it is the least restrictive environment to ensure their safety and give them the most family-like setting?
At this time, yes.
And during this review period, have you had the opportunity to discuss the case service plan with both parents?
I have briefly with both parents. I was able to meet with Ms. Demansky at her placement where she's currently residing with her grandparents. And then I also have met, as Ms. Berger stated, with Mr. Schmidt for a family team meeting separately. So we did kind of have a discussion of kind of what was expected, kind of what to look forward to for this court hearing, as well as, you know, Ms. Demansky's pending sentencing. So we did have a discussion about a variety of things that were coming up.
And you stated that Mr. Schmidt has not been engaged in services during this review period.
He has not. He had indicated that he was looking for a new therapist because he's since moved out of county. So the therapist he was going to was in Monroe County. He's now, I believe, in Jackson County.
And as far as Ms. Demansky, has she engaged in new services to address the issues that cause the children to come into care?
She's completed most all of her services. I think the last piece that we were waiting for was her sentencing, just to kind of see what was going on with that. And she was previously receiving supervised parenting time with that parent aid aspect intertwined with this. So because of visits being suspended, there's nothing further for her to complete.
Do you know if she's continuing to engage in any therapy or any other services?
She was doing it on her own. She had already completed therapy through Catholic Charities.
And as relates to the benefit from the services, it's a little hard, I know, when parenting time is suspended, but do you have an opinion as to whether she's demonstrated any benefit from services?
Per discussions, I mean, she seems to be very remorseful of kind of what happened. We talked about some of the things. I mean, I think it was a significant situation where she was very overwhelmed. And, you know, she lashed out and, you know, we discussed a little bit of that. And could it happen again? We don't know. That's not, I can't predict the future, but, you know, I think this has definitely been a real eye opener for her to kind of see, and, you know, this is what's happened with her actions. This is how it's affected the kids in moving forward. I mean, like I said, I can't predict what's going to happen at sentencing or anything like that. I think for right now, if she were to re-engage in a supervised setting, I think she would be fine. Like I said, she does very well during those supervised parenting times. The kids seem very receptive to her and they get excited during those visits. So like I said, I don't have a problem doing the supervised parenting times if that's reimbursed.
And what are the barriers to reunification today?
One of the biggest barriers, especially for Ms. Demansky, as I mentioned, she's pending sentencing. I don't know specifically what's going to come. I think it's July 27th or 28th. So I don't know what's going to be coming of that. And depending on what her sentence will be, we'll really kind of determine what we're going to be doing as far as our case, whether we're going to file a petition or if we're going to move forward, continue with that reunification piece, or if we change essentially even to a guardianship. I need that key aspect for her. As far as Mr. Schmidt, he needs to re-engage in services. At one point, we were ready to reunify, and then I don't know what happened. Things just kind of escalated. He decided to step back. He needed some time, some space, and that was about 4 months ago. So there hasn't been any visits, no services, nothing in those 4 months.
And what is the current permanency goal?
Currently, the goal is still reunification, concurrent plan of adoption.
And is today's hearing, you're here for permanency planning hearing as well. Do you believe that it is still in the children's best interest to maintain those permanency goals for them?
I do. I think that we do need to consider a goal change. especially with a lot of the things that are gonna be coming up here in the next couple of weeks. Like I said, there's a couple of options that we could take a look at, whether that's filing a termination petition or moving towards like a guardianship route. Those are some other options. I don't necessarily want to go for termination. That's not necessarily what these kids need. They need permanency, yes, but they also need mom and dad in the picture as well.
Is there anything else that you'd like to highlight from your court report or just from your knowledge of the case for the court today?
I mean, just to kind of touch base what Ariel was stating about the kids. I mean, these kids they're great kids. They really are. MW, he's full of life. He's got a big personality. He's very active. I did note too that he still is continuing in therapy services. It's just he's 5. It's very hard for him to engage in services. So they're doing the best that they can with that, trying to navigate everything. I do want to know just a quick update too, as far as the complaint that had come in back in March. I had to reach out to law enforcement to kind of see where they were at as far as their investigation of the incident. So it's my understanding they started doing some interviews. They're going to set up a CAC interview with MW potentially on the 26th of this month. And then we were going to, I got the go ahead from law enforcement to go ahead and set up the CTAC evaluation as well for him. And we're going to do that here in Lenawee. So Dad's going to bring him down for that assessment as well. So there's a lot of things that are going to be coming still in the future as far as MW, as far as BS. He's still doing very well. Yes, he's had some setbacks as far as his medical needs. He's been dealing with COVID. He's been dealing with bronchitis, strep. So it's been an ongoing thing the past couple of months for him, just recovering, and he gets to feeling better, and then he gets sick again. So this last week he was diagnosed with strep, and just poor little guy. I mean, he's hanging in there. He's doing good despite that. He did get assessed for early on services. He qualified for speech therapy, so he's going to be starting with that. And it was my understanding come February, he should qualify for a possible IEP through Lincoln Schools near where he resides. So he'll get services within that school district as well. That could potentially follow through with him through later years in school. So, but overall, both boys are doing very well. They've adjusted very well to their placements. They have a good, solid schedule and routine, and they're doing very well in their placements.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions of this witness, so would move to the court report in addition to the case service plans as proposed.
No objection.
No objection.
Clarification, not necessarily an objection. Paragraph on page 2, paragraph 2B, there is a recommendation that my client's child be returned to him, which is 180 degrees different from what's on page 6, which says he needs to be warned that his parental rights terminated.
So what I had indicated in the very beginning of my testimony is that that should read that he should remain in his relative care instead of being returned to the care of the father with those services. So just, that was our recommendation. That was a misprint on my end.
With that, I have no other objections.
Thank you. They are received. Questions, Ms. Berger?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Mawad?
If you just one, first of all, I appreciate your honesty. You've always been great to deal with. Have you done any thinking about if Judge Anzalone sentences my client to, say, the worst possible case scenario, I believe would be 6 months. Obviously, the judge has the right to censor probation, 30 days, 90 days, 6 months. And she's out in 5 months. Would you consider holding off on a petition to terminate and allow her to come out for reunification? Have you thought about that yet at all? And if not, that's okay. I just wanted to see what your thought process was if there's a short term of incarceration.
Like I said, it just really depends on what is going to happen at sentencing. We're not objectionate to continuing with reunification,
Okay.
But it's this key piece that's really kind of holding us up as far as moving forward with that.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, she's completed her case service plan. She's done all of that. It's just this key component is that last piece that we need to figure out and where we need to
Okay.
move forward.
Appreciate you. I don't have any more questions, Judge.
No questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. Can you return your seat? Other witnesses?
Not today, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Berger?
I have no witnesses, Judge. Thank you.
Mr. Mawat?
No witnesses, Judge.
Mr. Schmidt, is there anything you want to tell the court?
Not at this time, no.
No witnesses.
Comments?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, we are requesting the goal remain reunification with the concurrent goal of adoption, with the understanding that there will be further discussions pending Ms. Demansky's sentencing. And obviously, given the outstanding custody issue with the older child, and then the fact that the younger child is with a relative placement, I think that there are some opportunities to discuss different permanency plans for these children. And given that they are stable and in the least restrictive environment, we do ask that they remain there and continue this case out for another review hearing. Thank you.
As of today, parenting time for both parents continues to be suspended.
Your Honor, given Ms. Young's testimony, I think that it is appropriate to maintain that suspension pending the sentencing hearing solely because of the potential psychological harm of reintroducing in a supervised setting and then Ms. Demansky going away again, coming back. I think we should be mindful of that. And then also until Mr. Schmidt has an opportunity to engage in services, understand how to refamiliarize himself with his child, I do believe that there still is a risk of harm to the child that he would be having parenting time with. So we would just continue to request that suspension.
Okay. How does the department intend to address the issues that have arisen most frequently with Mr. Schmidt? I was just reviewing the file to make sure I didn't miss anything, frankly. And it looks like the initial removal petition and even the prior CPS history in this case all revolved around failure to protect and some other issues that had nothing to do with the recent struggles that Mr. Schmidt has had.
Your Honor, is my understanding that parenting classes were part of the case service plan?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was like,
Sorry, I should have asked you why you were on this.
Oh, that's okay. I can further explain it if you're okay with me doing that. He did complete the Orchards program. I believe it was about a 6-month program. And that at that point, once he completed that program specifically, that's where that recommendation to return to his care with FRP services through Orchards was introduced. And it was at that point we tried to do the FRP services. He didn't engage with them, and then he stopped communicating with the majority of us. And the communication that we did have was very spotty. It was kind of inappropriate. Like he basically told me to F off. And it was like, I'm done. I'm done fighting. I'm done doing this. He didn't come to the last court hearing because he said he was done. I'm trying to get him re-engaged in services. He's since moved. He's got a new girlfriend. He's got a new job. He's trying to find a therapist in that area to kind of address some of the things that he needs to address as far as mental health, because he was expressing a lot of issues dealing with that aspect of things. So I think once he can get re-engaged and get into that mental health services and try to get back on track, I think he'd be in a better place to try to get re-induced to his son further down the line. So I am in agreement with that with Thomas.
Has there been a substance abuse assessment scheduled for him or any kind of reevaluation to discover what might have led to? Because I know there was a car accident and I heard the word relapse, but I was not aware that there was any substance issues with this John.
We did a random drug screen with him and it was negative. So there wasn't any further concern with that, I mean, there was comments that was made by the relative caregiver, but outside of that, we don't have any solid evidence that there was any substance abuse concerns at all. He submitted the drug screen, and that's what we asked of him. If it was positive, then we would have addressed that, but that wasn't a concern at that moment.
I understand he was in a car accident at some point.
So it depends on what story you get. From my understanding, a deer hit him, and then he had to get his vehicle fixed. And I don't know if he was in another car accident, actually involving another vehicle, or I don't know specifically. I'd have to have that conversation with him again. But he ended up getting a whole new vehicle, and that's when he had moved, trying to kind of start over essentially. So I don't know specifics of what happened with that.
Will you look a little bit further into that in our next review
I will, yes.
period, including perhaps even find a copy of any police reports, traffic reports, or anything else around what's been happening? Because those are pretty significant changes.
I can have that discussion with them and get more information.
All right, counselors, questions based on my questions?
No, not on behalf of myself or Mr. Mansky.
No, Your Honor.
None, Judge. Thank you.
No, yeah, thank you, Ms. Okay, onward to comments by Ms. Berger.
Yes, thank you, Judge. At this time, I am asking for parenting time to continue to be suspended. I am in agreement with the specification by the caseworker that we should keep that in place definitely until their sentencing. And I agree with Miss Thomas. And if we would reintroduce and then mom would go away again, it would create additional trauma to these children. So definitely, I want to see what happens at sentencing to see if I would change my recommendation regarding the continued suspension of parenting time. I also think that it may be time to consider change, at least for father, again, maybe holding off on mothers until after that sentencing. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. I really, really find it difficult and don't know if I would be able to ever recommend a full reunification at this point, specifically with the types of injuries that were sustained by this child. So I continue to have reservations there, even if case plan services are completed. So I think at this time, I just want to really see what happens at that sentencing and see if father is able to re-engage. But I am recommending that we continue with the suspended time. Thank you.
Judge, I appreciate it. I think more of my comments to the motion that was filed by Ms. Berger to get the suspension are just more of my comments and my observations, and you can make your decision. So paragraph 2, she says that Ms. Demansky, paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 have to do with her guilty plea and her admittance that she was guilty. I don't think it's ever been an issue during this reunification. She's never denied in this proceeding that nothing happened. I don't think that plays a part into the motion. There's other allegations that the minor child, BS, more importantly, exhibited severe behavior after visiting mother. Quite frankly, I haven't seen anything. I haven't heard anything as far as testimony is concerned, and I haven't seen anything to that effect. And it also says that the 3 older children that have been released from the jurisdiction have recently disclosed that they heard mother beating the brother and that he was screaming. It's the first I've heard of it. I don't know where Ms. Berger got that from. Obviously, some adult should not be talking to kids about this incident. I'm not saying it's Ms. Berger, so I want you to know that. That's not what I'm saying. She probably heard it from another source, and I just don't think that's correct. Then we get into some, I think, behavior that MW was sexually abused. And I appreciate Caitlin and her honesty that my client's not the target on that investigation. She's not being investigated for anything. Regarding any allegations that come out of MW as far as any CSC issues or violent behavior. Other than that, I just didn't see anything in her motion that corroborated any objective evidence of anything that Bailey has done wrong to merit the suspension. Yes, she's being sentenced by Judge Anzalone on the 27th. That is correct. And so I just wanted to make that a record. Obviously, your discretion on how you want to handle the suspension, whether or not you want to wait, or if you want to do that, make a ruling today, however you want to. It's fine. I just wanted to let you know my thoughts on Ms. Berger's motion. She's doing her job. I get it. I just disagree with the lack of objective evidence in her motion. That's all.
Mr. Brooks?
The comments are directed to my client, Your Honor, since I haven't spoken to him very much. Mr. Schmidt, when I first got this case, I thought this was going to be easy. They didn't have much of anything against you. The only thing that's kept you in this case, the only reason your child has not been returned to you is because in plain English, you haven't done anything. Now, if you want your child back, you've got to participate in this case, cooperate with the plans, and do the work. If you don't intend to do that, you're not going to get this child back. So I'm asking you to decide which way you want to go with this. Do you want to cooperate and do the work? Or do you want to just continue as you have and eventually, as is said in the report, wait for the department to file a motion to terminate your parental rights? Thank you.
Well, the court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review and permanency planning hearing, as well as the motion on reinstatement of parenting time. I suppose the only concern I have in restating parenting time is the behaviors that are reported to have been associated after parenting time, which is not necessarily uncommon for a child that has to see a parent and then not see a parent for extended periods of time. Clearly, that is stress for the child, but it's also important to maintain the bond between the parent and child. I do see also that we have some new concerns, and I say new, meaning new since the filing of the petition around the other child, MW. Again, these have not been directed towards Ms. Bailey Demansky. But that is her child. And we await further investigation on the point. We also continue to await an early on evaluation for the child at issue here, BS. I'd like to ask who we typically ask in these situations about parenting time. Should we, I think Ms. Brene Moore has made some recommendations for us before on parenting time. So if we could ask a professional on this to give us a recommendation, have a look at the case, and look at parenting time for both of these parents with this child, I think that could be very useful. What the timeline is on that, I don't know, because I know our service providers are carrying very high caseloads. So I'm going to leave the suspension in place because of that potential risk of harm to the child mentally and emotionally, not necessarily physically. We have some outstanding questions to be answered on the sentencing. So I think because of those reasons and because of Mr. Schmidt's absence as well, that suspension will remain in place until we can have something from our professional. And even if that's a reintroductory type schedule, I'd like to see this done in a way that serves the interest of the child and secures against any mental and emotional risk of harm to his well-being, which I think is a risk at this point, given father's extensive absence and the sort of almost, well, the absence of mother based on the motion by our GAL, but also because of some, and some of those issues that he's having around parenting time. There's a request in the court report for an accelerated review period. So I would like to ask our other attorneys if they think that that would be useful as well.
Well, I think you mentioned Renee Moore. She's pretty backed up. So she's gonna get sentenced next week, so that's good. Here's what kind of my thought process is. I'm not worried about getting something quick. I'll tell you why. I want to see what happens with the sentencing. And then maybe I file a motion to cope regarding what happened at sentencing and maybe for a request to get her parenting time. By then, hopefully we'll have more information on all these other issues. So I'm not sure what you're thinking as far as time, but I want it to be done right and thorough. And I want to make sure that I represent Bailey and not rush it.
So the earliest available review would be Monday, August 28th in the afternoon. But our regular review timeframe would be like October.
Your Honor, if I may,
I can land in September.
So let's do that. I may be in a continued CSD trial in Berry County, but listen, if something happens, we gotta move it for a week. You guys are always great on that, but I'd like to keep that date if it's good with Ms. Thomas.
you want the earlier one?
Yeah, we could, August 28th?
Yeah.
Or what was the other date, Chance?
August 28th, I can go out from there. I've
What
got,
would be the next date after that?
well, I have an hour on the 30th at 10. And then going into September, it looks like I have Tuesday the 5th.
I would appreciate the 5th, so I'm out of my jury trial. And I can attend to that, if that works with the court.
Ms. Berger, do you have commitments on the 5th?
Sorry, September 5th, I'm available.
All right, I have 10 a.m.
That's fine.
All right, so let's set our next review and permanency planning hearing on September 5th. And so for the purposes of tackling the issue of parenting time, I'm gonna essentially just put in the order that I'd like a professional to be consulted and that the department follow the recommendations of that professional, even if we receive them before we come back. And of course, Ms. Berger, I'm sure will be vigilant as always and let me know if she disagrees with the professional's recommendations.
Did the court set a time?
Vigilant. Sorry.
10.
10 o'clock.
10 a.m.
10 o'clock?
Yes, and you'll have your coffee ready for you at 10 when you walk in, okay?
Well, equally important as the time, as this court well knows.
September 5th at 10 a.m. for permanency planning and review hearing. Your Honor, as far as I'm concerned, that resolves your parenting time motion.
Yes, it does. It does, Judge. I appreciate you. Thank you.
May I just have a question for clarification, because this comes up quite a bit when we have suspension of parenting time and trying to gather information. If our option boils down to a bonding assessment, depending on the professional's recommendation, can the parent participate in a bonding assessment?
Yes,
Thank you.
because if that's a recommendation from the professional about parenting time, then to me, that's supported by the professional in making that determination. So
Your Honor, just to kind of further clarify, so we're already gonna get a CTAC evaluation set up for MW. Would it be appropriate that we do a bonding assessment as part of that? And that be that recommendation to fulfill that portion and then work on getting the recommendation for VS through a different source?
So I think you've got
Do it all together.
to unpack that a little bit. I would prefer that if it's gonna be Renee Moore, for example, that you ask her that question. If she would find that useful, if she thinks that that's a safe thing for the child as she makes her decision on parenting time. So in other words, if Renee thinks it's okay to do the bonding assessment, then do it. Now, if you're asking the CTAC evaluator to make the recommendation, then obviously it would be up to that professional. But contact between either parent and his child, I would like to be sanctioned by a professional. So, okay, does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Any other questions on that point?
No, not on behalf of myself and Ms. Demansky. She understands.
Well, I do find reasonable efforts are being made towards the goal of reunification. This is a complicated case. We wish Mr. Schmidt the best of luck moving forward. Hopefully he's able to tackle some of these things that have come up recently. And we'll wait for Ms. Young to tackle all of her homework assignments and let us know what the outstanding issues are moving forward and what services are being put into place for both parents in order to help try to remedy that in pursuit of our continued goal of reunification. At this point, that will continue to be the goal. We are getting to the point where I'll have to make a decision on what is best for this child moving forward. And it will probably be within either this time frame or the next 60 days or so. But I agree with Ms. Young that permanency is important, but so are the parents of the child. And the ideal resolution here is to see one of these parents be able to provide a home for their child. So I'm not going to make a goal change today. I'll reserve that for our next review hearing. And I certainly find Ms. Young in satisfaction of her obligations as well as Ms. Berger. Thank you, ladies. There remains a significant risk of harm associated with returning the children of Ms. Bailey to her care for the reasons that we've articulated today, especially that outstanding question on what's going to be happening with her criminally speaking, as well as the need to continue to demonstrate progress on her case services goals. Mr. Schmidt's been absent, so I need Ms. Young to do some more investigation on that point, as I previously articulated. So I'm not going to be able to return his child to him as of today. We have those outstanding risks that have been actually more recently identified that need to be addressed. So children will remain with the respective places that they're in, relative as well as parents, pending our next review hearing, which will be September 5th at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
That's all for today.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Oh, Lord. I've got a Prussian guard